When I was traveling in an ancient town, I stumbled upon a postcard that bore my husband's handwriting. May the years be worth remembering, and may deep love see us to old age. David, Winnie left this in the ancient town. The date on the postcard was September 11th, 2008. At that time, I had just given birth to our second child. The baby developed a high fever and fell unconscious. I hadn't even finished my postpartum recovery, yet I rushed her to the hospital myself. But I was too late. She never woke up. I held that tiny body in my arms and broke down crying in the hospital corridor that reeked of disinfectant. As I wept, I called David. He quickly hung up and sent a text, on a business trip. All along, he had been making promises of forever to his first love. Chapter 1. This was my first time joining a group tour, and I chose the ancient town route. When David heard I was going, he looked up from his book. "Tiffany, you don't even understand history. What's the point of going to places like that? You'd be better off visiting a big city." I was ironing his shirt and smiled as I replied. "Precisely because I don't understand it, I want to soak it in." David is a history professor at a prestigious university. He's visited every historic town in the country. From him, I'd heard about Shitong's misty rain, Zhouzhuang's small bridges and flowing waters, and the white walls and black tiles of Hongsuan. After hearing so much from him, the desire to see it for myself slowly took root. Now that both our children had grown up and started their own lives, I finally had time for myself. I could finally go somewhere. "David, would you like to come with me? You could explain the things I don't understand." "No time," David said, already back to flipping through his book. "There's an academic lecture next month. I need to prepare." He was always busy. I didn't press the issue and simply turned to pack my suitcase. Chapter 2. I found the yellowing postcard in that ancient town. It wasn't hard to notice, the shopkeeper had placed it right in the center. It read, September 11th, 2008. May the years be worth remembering, and may deep love see us to old age. David, Winnie left this in the ancient town. The handwriting was bold and unmistakable. I knew instantly it was David's. The moment I saw it, a chill swept over me from head to toe. Memories flooded back, the pouring rain that night, the hospital soaked in the smell of disinfectant, the lifeless little body in my arms. She hadn't even lived a full month. In despair, I called David. He hung up quickly and told me he was on a business trip. Only now do I realize, at that very moment, he was swearing eternal love to his first girlfriend. My gaze drifted down, and I saw David's name again. September 1st, 2014. Revisiting the place. The feelings remain unchanged. David, Winnie left this. I remember that year, our son took his college entrance exams, and I brought him to his university in September. I asked David to come along, but he shook his head and said he had a grant proposal to write. No time. August 3rd, 2022. True love never fades, when it returns, it only grows stronger. From David to Winnie. I stared blankly at the message as the shopkeeper began to speak. These 3 postcards were written by a history professor. He and his wife were very much in love. They visited this ancient town 3 times, and every time, they stopped by my shop. They'd always walk hand in hand along the cobblestone path at dawn, nap together in a small boat at noon, and return to their guest house under the soft drizzle of night. And they were each other's first love. The shopkeeper said with envy in her voice. This, I suppose, is what love looks like. I looked at the 3 postcards, and I felt as if the ground beneath me was giving way. As if something had drained every ounce of strength from my body, I stumbled out of the shop and sat by the small river, dazed for a long time. This year marks the 30th anniversary of my marriage to David. For more than 10 of those years, he had been unfaithful to this relationship. Chapter 3. It wasn't until after I married David that I learned he had a first love. Her name was Winnie Smith. Winnie had been his university history professor, 5 years older than him. They fell in love on campus, but just when David loved her the most, Winnie chose to marry someone else. David came from a poor family, while Winnie was the daughter of a well-off city household. After she left, David didn't date anyone for a long time. Time passed, and eventually, his family began to pressure him, arranging blind dates one after another. I was one of them. That day, he looked exhausted. When he saw me, he stubbed out his cigarette and asked if I wanted to grab dinner. After a few dates, he asked if I'd be willing to marry him. He was well-mannered and educated, so I said yes. Back then, getting married was a simple thing. My parents had also met through a blind date. They stayed devoted to one another their whole lives. I thought David and I would be the same. Though he often seemed restrained and distant, I thought it was just the reserved nature of a scholarly man. Only now do I realize, it was contempt. The kind of contempt that only an intellectual might disguise well, but still feel deep in his bones. To him, I, a woman from a rural village, was never truly worthy of him. Even though I stood by him from obscurity to renown, gave him children, and cared for his aging parents until their final days. He still looked down on me, through and through. Even a commercialized ancient town, he thought I, uneducated as I was, didn't deserve to visit. Chapter 4. I didn't continue the tour. David called to tell me our son had been hospitalized with gastroenteritis. By the time I got home, the surgery was already done, and he was lying in bed. As soon as he saw me, my son started to complain. "Mom, why did you go off on a trip for no reason? I had to survive on takeout these past few days." David didn't look pleased either, though he didn't say much. He simply adjusted his glasses and told me, "Good thing you're back. The doctor said he needs a light diet, small portions, more frequent meals. Go cook him some noodles now." But I had only just set down my suitcase, hadn't even had a sip of water. I swallowed the storm of emotions inside me and tried to speak calmly to David. I went to the ancient town. So? David looked at me, bewildered. "You've gone wild now? Don't want to come home anymore? Do you even understand dramatic culture? Ever read Mao Dun's works?" He raised an eyebrow, as if mocking my ignorance. "You don't know anything. You're no different from the average tourist just passing through. I told you not to go. Someone like you going to an ancient town is meaningless." I went to the town's post office. I interrupted quietly. "And saw the postcards you wrote." David froze for a moment, caught off guard. But it only lasted a second before he turned and questioned me. "You're overthinking this because of a postcard? What happened between Winnie and me is ancient history. We've both moved on, started families of our own. She's like a mentor and a friend now. It's not what you're imagining." "Really? But what you wrote to her was, 'Feelings remain unchanged.' You wrote that love never fades. You wrote that you'd grow old together." Our son, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "Mom, are you really this upset over something so small? Miss Smith is a great person, she's helped me a lot with work. She and Dad only met up at the ancient town because of a promise from their youth. She has her own kids, her own family. She wouldn't interfere with your marriage. You can relax." I slowly turned and looked at my son. So, he knew about Winnie all along. But then why did they all keep it from me? From 2008 to 2024, 16 years. 16 years he spent reminiscing with his first love, while I stayed home worrying about groceries, cooking oil, and daily life, growing older bit by bit. Suddenly, I found it funny. So funny that tears came as I laughed. David rarely saw me cry, and for a moment, he panicked. He dropped his usual aloofness and tried to explain, gently. "That day, September 11th, 2008, I was doing a field study in the town. I happened to run into her. We hadn't planned it, hadn't contacted each other. It was just a coincidence. I thought I'd scream at him. But instead, I wiped my tears with the back of my hand, rested a hand over my lower abdomen, and asked softly. 'David, the moment you picked up my call, Were you heartbroken over our daughter's death, or were you thrilled to see your first love again? David stared at me, lips trembling. His voice was hoarse. Tiffany. It's been too long. I don't remember anymore. But I do. I remember the daughter I carried for 10 months, lying silently in my arms. I called her baby girl. She didn't respond. Didn't even cry. She passed away on her 16th day of life. Her father, busy with work, had only seen her 3 times. Looking back, these past 10+ years of my life now seem almost absurd. If you didn't love me, you could have just told me. Why drag me along all these years? In that moment, every last ounce of strength left me. I looked at David and said each word carefully and clearly. Let's get a divorce. Chapter 5. Our son reacted even more strongly than David. Mom, what are you talking about? He stared at me, gritting his teeth. I just had surgery, and I'm still in bed, and now you want to divorce, Dad? Don't you think that's selfish? I turned to look at him, and after a long pause, I let out a soft laugh. Then if I don't get a divorce, what exactly am I supposed to do? Take care of me, obviously. Didn't Dad tell you? I'm supposed to avoid greasy, heavy food right now. Cook me something light, I'm starving. He even started analyzing the pros and cons like it was some kind of business deal. Mom, I'm planning to propose to Olivia next month. If you and Dad get divorced now, I'm afraid she might get the wrong impression, think our family's unstable. You want me to settle down soon, don't you? I'll give you a chubby grandchild to dote on real soon. He chuckled at his own words. Don't make such a big deal out of this. You're already 50, halfway in the grave. Getting divorced now would just make us all look ridiculous. Every word he said felt like a knife, cutting through my chest, leaving nothing but blood and ruin. David had come to his senses by then too. He sighed. Tiffany, stop making a scene. We've made it this far, why bother getting divorced now? Made do? He called our entire marriage, making do. I shook my head. But I don't want to make do anymore. Saying I wanted a divorce was like dropping a stone into a stagnant pond. They both clung to the belief that I was just overreacting. My son even kept trying to boss me around, telling me to cook him noodles. I ignored him. Instead, I went to the study. I searched for a long time before finally finding our marriage certificate, buried at the bottom of a drawer. Ironically, right next to it was a thick, yellowed notebook. The edges of the pages were curled, clearly worn from frequent reading. Almost involuntarily, I opened it. On the first page, in neat handwriting, it said, "To my beloved, this book is for you." The entries began in 1994. 1994, time bears witness to all sincerity. If you show up at the wedding, I'll choose you without hesitation. That was the year we got married. 1997. Reason tells me to move forward, but my heart lingers on you. I hope our story is still unfinished. That was the year our son was born. 2008, the one who caught my eye at first glance still makes my heart flutter, even after all these years. That was the year they reunited. 2009, maybe the memories of my youth are blurred, but when you appear before me, everything becomes clear again. 2010, the story continues. Between new stories with old lovers and old stories with new ones, the former is always more romantic. In our time, it was fashionable to write love poems. But I never received a single love letter from David. He once told me his pen was only for the sweeping tides of ancient civilizations, for the rise and fall of centuries of history. But in 2024, he wrote, "My beloved will always be the most passionate chapter one ever write." And that beloved wasn't his wife. It was Winnie. 30 years of marriage, he spent 30 years yearning for his first love, and 16 entangled with her in secret. Tiffany, what are you doing? David yanked the notebook from my hands, carefully wiping its leather cover. The book was already spotless, yet he kept wiping and wiping, as if it were stained by my touch. As if I were the one who was dirty. I lowered my gaze and said quietly. Let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. Tiffany, this is absolutely ridiculous. David snapped. Our son was furious too. When they saw they couldn't talk me out of it, they pulled out their phones and called my daughter. I had 3 children with David, 2 daughters and 1 son. Sean is the eldest. Vicky is the second child. And our youngest, our little girl. She's gone. Vicky arrived quickly. The moment she stepped inside, she asked. Mom, is it true you want to divorce Dad? Of course it is, Sean cut in. She went on some weird trip to an ancient town and came back completely unhinged, suddenly demanding a divorce from Dad. Talk some sense into her, would you? She's acting insane. She's way too old to still be clinging to this love and romance nonsense. She better not ruin my wedding because of her drama. Vicky walked up to me and gently wrapped her arms around me. Mom, you must have suffered something huge to even consider divorce. Will you tell me about it? I hadn't meant to cry. But as soon as I heard her say those words, the tears came pouring out. Chapter 6. I told my daughter everything, about David and Winnie, their long entanglement. Vicky was stunned, and then furious. She pulled out a tissue and gently wiped away my tears. Mom, divorce him. Their so-called love cost you decades of your life. If you hadn't seen those postcards in the ancient town, how much longer would they have hidden it from you? Another 20 years? 30? Until they could bury the secret underground, along with your whole youth and your life? She rested her head on my lap. Mom, your life doesn't belong to anyone else. You deserve something new, something better. David and Sean had called her, hoping she'd talk me down. But instead, she became the only one in this household to stand by me. Even the next day, Sean was still trying to dissuade me. Mom, are you sure you're not just upset? Trying to use divorce to force Dad to cut ties with Ms. Winnie Smith? There's no need. Seriously. She's helped me a lot. My current business partners are her former students. It's only because she put in a word for me that our deals have gone so smoothly. She's not like you. She's a respected university professor, well-connected, knowledgeable, someone who can open doors for me. Not like you, stuck at home with your tiny little world. You're not getting any younger. Think about me for once, and stop making trouble for Dad and Ms. Smith. I looked at this son I had raised for over 20 years, and felt like I didn't recognize him at all. The little boy I remembered, who used to cling to me, crying for hugs, had grown up in the blink of an eye. When he was young, I couldn't bear to let him suffer the slightest hardship. And now that he's grown, he tells me, Mom, it's okay, for you to suffer, just do it for me. I shook my head in disappointment. You and your father. You're the same. Both shameless. Seeing that all his efforts to persuade me had failed, Sean lost his temper. Dad, if she wants a divorce, then let her have it. I don't believe it. After 30 years with you, she thinks she can just walk away? Isn't there a 1-month cooling-off period? I guarantee she'll come crawling back before that's over. A rural woman like her, uneducated, uncultured, no social skills, and she had the nerve to think she deserved a man like you? Please. She should have been thanking her lucky stars from day one. Must have been cursed during that trip to suddenly come back acting like she's royalty. David said nothing, but the look on his face said it all. He agreed. Once upon a time, he was the one who had proposed to me. But now, he truly believed I was the one who had married up. With a sharp smack, my daughter slapped my son hard across the face. Then she grabbed a glass of water and flung it at him. What the hell did you just say? She screamed. When you were a baby, Mom never once complained about changing your diapers. And now you dare to look down on her? Sean, don't you forget, she's the one who raised you. When you had a high fever and were hospitalized, it was Mom who stayed by your side. When you started college, she was the one who carried your luggage. And where was your dad? Off whispering sweet nothings to his old flame. You weren't like this before college. Now just because someone throws you a few favors, you're ready to turn your back on your own mother? Sean wiped the water off his face with a towel and sneered. You just don't know Ms. Smith. You're judging her based only on what mom told you. Once she starts helping you too, you'll change your mind. After raising this son for over 2 decades, the desire to cut ties with him came in an instant. David was a man with too much pride. He wouldn't beg, and he certainly wouldn't try to keep me. He went to the bathroom to comb his hair neatly, pulled out one of the shirts I had folded for him, put on a jacket, and said matter-of-factly, "If you insist on divorcing, then so be it." We went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to file the paperwork. Sean came too. While I was filling out the forms, he pointed at a strand of gray hair on my head and snorted. "You're this old and still want a divorce? Incredible." The female clerk glanced at my birth date and frowned. "Auntie's not even retirement age, how is that old?" Besides, she added, "We see people of all ages filing for divorce, some as young as 20, some as old as 80. No matter the age, everyone has the right to choose. Everyone has the chance to start over, don't they?" Sean fell silent. When we left the bureau, my daughter and I turned left. David and Sean went right. David looked down at me from his tall frame and said coldly, "Tiffany, you still have 1 month. If you change your mind, I'll let you withdraw the divorce application." "Don't worry, Dad," Sean said behind him. "She won't even last 10 days. She'll come crawling back." Then he added, "By the way, about that client Ms. Smith mentioned, when do you think she can introduce me?" I didn't listen to the rest. I turned away and walked in the opposite direction. The sun was almost too bright that day. The sky was an impossible shade of blue. My daughter and I held hands as we strolled through the mall. I dyed my hair black. Had it permed into soft waves. She picked out several beautiful dresses for me. Looking at myself in the mirror inside the fitting room, I suddenly thought, 50 isn't that old. Getting divorced at 50 isn't that late either. At least I still have decades ahead of me to live the life I truly want. That evening, as we walked home, my daughter linked her arm with mine and said, "Mom, I'm thinking about taking some vacation days. I want to go to Tanzania to see the Great Migration. It's not the most comfortable trip, but the visuals, the sheer impact, will be unforgettable. Will you come with me?" "Yes," I said. "Let's go." Chapter 7. Before heading to Africa, I received 2 phone calls from David. He said he was going to an academic conference and asked where his suit and ties were. "Left side of the wardrobe, second shelf from the bottom," I replied. "All right. Thanks." Later, he called again, asking where to buy his hair gel. It had run out. "The specialty shop on the 2nd floor of Tianjin Mall." "Got it. Thanks." Just as he was about to hang up, I stopped him. "Wait a second. What, you want to cancel the divorce?" I was holding my boarding pass, walking toward the gate with a backpack slung over my shoulder. "No. I just wanted to tell you, don't call me for trivial things like this anymore. Let's keep contact to a minimum from now on." There was a long silence on the other end before he finally said, "Okay." It was my first time traveling abroad. The conditions in Africa were as tough as they say. Often there was no signal on the road, and the ride was long and bumpy. Dust flew in through the open windows, covering my jacket in a fine coat of red earth. Showering was difficult, tap water left my skin sticky, so I poured bottled water over myself instead. But I had become an intruder in the grasslands. A pink sea of flamingos stretched out before me like a dream. At sunrise, the first animal plunged into the river. Thousands of wildebeests followed, churning up water and raising a deafening roar that made the earth tremble beneath us. Wilderness and abundance coexisted. Vastness and freedom stood side by side. Here, only the laws of survival applied, the strong prey on the weak. And yet, between life and death, nature composed its grand hymn of vitality. High up in a hot air balloon, looking down at the boundless plains, I felt a kind of peace I had never known before. David, Sean, even Winnie, whom I had never met. They were merely passing characters in the long story of my life. I should never have lost myself over temporary guests. When I got back home, the cooling-off period was over. David and I received our divorce certificate. A few days later, Sean sent me a photo. In the deep autumn light, David and Winnie were touring Nanchuan together. Winnie wore a khaki trench coat, her long hair pinned up elegantly with a hair stick, leaning gracefully against David's shoulder. They held hands tightly, smiling at the camera. Sean asked, "Don't they look perfect together?" To my own surprise, I felt calm. I even let out a quiet laugh. "If they were both single, they would make quite the match," I replied. "Did you think that after you left, we'd all fall apart?" "You were wrong." He texted me in a long string of messages. "Dad is so happy traveling with Ms. Smith. She introduced me to new business resources, and everything's going smoothly. Oh, and Olivia said yes to my proposal. We're planning to have a baby next year. Since you insisted on all this, don't expect to be part of it. I won't be letting you take care of my kid." I responded coolly. "I never planned to babysit for you anyway." Not long after that message, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Hello, this is Olivia. Are you Sean's mother? May I speak with you for a moment?" Chapter 8. Olivia was the girlfriend Sean had chased for 3 years. I had only met her once, but she seemed like a well-mannered and educated young woman. "Auntie," she began. "Sean and I have been talking about getting married. We'd originally planned a family meeting, but you didn't come." I sipped my tea. He didn't invite me. When I mentioned you, he acted strange. May I ask? Did something happen? I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear and said calmly. I divorced Sean's father. To put it simply, Sean's father was emotionally unfaithful for years. And Sean knew about it. He helped him keep the secret and believed he was doing nothing wrong. Olivia stared at me, stunned. The cup slipped from her fingers, water spilling across the table. "Auntie, could you tell me everything?" The afternoon sun slanted just right through the cafe window, casting a warm glow over us. I told her the whole story. As I spoke, Olivia's expression darkened. She cupped her drink with both hands, staring into the rippling liquid. After a long pause, she forced a smile, one that looked more painful than tears. "Auntie, I think if a man can treat his own mother so coldly, he's not likely to treat his wife much better. If today he doesn't think his father's cheating is wrong, then tomorrow, if he does the same, he won't think that's wrong either." The young woman rested her chin in her palm and looked at me, her eyes lingering on the wrinkles time had carved into my face. "I'm only 25. She said softly. "I still have time to go through heartbreak, to walk away, to fall in love again. But if I had to go through all this at 50, I don't know if I'd have the courage to start over." Her tone was wistful at first, but as she studied me, something in her expression eased, softened. "Auntie, I think I need to reassess Sean. And rethink this marriage." Later, I heard from my daughter that Olivia had broken off the engagement. Olivia never mentioned that we had met in private. She simply said that she found Sean's values lacking, that his character was flawed. In many ways, Sean reminded me of David. Back when Winnie left, David had fallen into despair. And now that Olivia had left, Sean drowned himself in alcohol day after day. His digestive issues were already bad. After drinking like that for days, he landed himself in the hospital. Late at night, David called me. "Tiffany, Sean's in the hospital. I'm still in Pingyao for a field study and can't make it. Can you go take care of him?" At the time, I was reading a travel guide for Changbai Mountain. I answered coolly, "You can hire a nurse to care for him. Or ask Winnie to go. Isn't he quite fond of her?" "Tiffany," David's voice darkened, edged with irritation. "You're his mother. If you won't take care of him, who will? But he no longer treats me like a mother. The bond between mother and child can't be maintained by one person alone. And with that, I hung up. Back in Tanzania, during the Great Migration, I realized that life requires a kind of courage, a willingness to just go when your heart calls for it. No matter your age, as long as you have passion for life, the possibilities remain endless. So, this winter, I decided to visit more places. I wanted to go north, where I'd never been, to see snow-covered mountains, frost-covered trees, and roaming elk. I spent a long time researching my trip and finally set my sights on Chiangbai Mountain. Just as I was looking forward to my winter trip, Sean called me again. "Mom," he said. "I'm heartbroken. It hurts so much." When I didn't reply, he added, "Mom, my stomach really hurts. You're not here, Dad's not here, and even my sister won't come see me." He rambled on and on. I switched to speaker mode, half listening while jotting down notes for a travel guide on Tanzania. After a long while, he paused and asked, "Mom, are you still there?" I'm here. Are you done?" "If so, I'm hanging up." Sean was stunned. "Mom, how can you be so indifferent when I'm like this? Are you really my mother? How could you be so cold and heartless?" I didn't want to talk to him anymore and was about to hang up. But Sean shouted after me, "Tiffany, you think just because Vicky supports you now, everything will be fine? She barely makes any money. Is she going to care for you in your old age? Eventually, you'll still need me. Dad already doesn't want you. If you don't start being nicer to me now, what will you do when you're old and alone? Do you even know what a miserable old age looks like?" I really shouldn't have wasted my time listening to him. Why talk about the future with someone who's already proven unreliable now? With that, I blocked all of Sean's contacts. That day, I casually posted a travel guide from my Tanzania trip, and to my surprise, it went viral. Online users were full of interesting comments. They said they saw in me a kind of freedom and boldness that transcended age. I gained quite a few new followers. Encouraged by my daughter, I decided to try becoming a travel blogger. The beauty of travel is that it welcomes everyone. You don't need to be highly educated or particularly cultured. As long as you have passion, you can enjoy the journey. Of course, learning about local customs and history is valuable. But there's no shame in being just a casual tourist either. My follower count continued to grow. My daughter taught me how to monetize with short videos. Just like before, my days were busy. But this time, I was busy for myself. And just when I thought everything was finally falling into place, something happened with David. David's affair with Winnie was exposed. By Winnie's husband. Chapter 9. After the divorce, David no longer held back. He began contacting Winnie more frequently. They didn't live in the same city, so they arranged to meet in nearby ancient towns. But Winnie had a husband and children, and her frequent absences began to raise suspicions within her family. The breaking point came when someone snapped a photo of David and Winnie walking hand in hand in Pingyao Ancient City, and posted it online. The caption read, "A love that even time can't erase." The comments section was flooded with praise. People marveled at their elegance, calling them a perfect intellectual match, childhood sweethearts steeped in culture. The post went viral, and eventually made its way to Winnie's family. Her husband was furious. He took Winnie straight to her university to confront David. Faced with her own husband, Winnie flatly denied any relationship with David. "David was once my student. What we have is nothing more than a teacher-student connection, nothing else," she said. David was visibly disappointed, but he knew his place. He lowered his head and said, "Yes. She's just my teacher, nothing more." Winnie's husband was the CEO of a major corporation. Before confronting her, he had already investigated Winnie and David's past. Their romance from over 30 years ago was exposed. The 16 years of ambiguous entanglement after marriage were also brought to light. Even the 3 postcards David had left in the old town ended up in Winnie's husband's hands. Faced with such solid evidence, their denials seemed laughably feeble. Winnie's husband filed for divorce. In that moment, David felt joy. After missing Winnie for so many years, he finally had the chance to be with her openly and rightfully. But Winnie felt the opposite. She clung to her husband, saying she didn't want to leave him. She said he was her true love, and that her lingering connection with David was merely unresolved regret from her youth. In front of her husband, she even said, "If I truly loved David, why would I have left him so decisively and married you back then?" David stared at her in disbelief. "Didn't you say it was your parents who forced you to break up with me? Didn't you say you never loved your husband, that he was crude and shallow? Were all those things you said to me just lies?" And so, the argument that day was not between husband and wife, but between David and Winnie. Coincidentally, it was right after class, and many students passed by. The commotion in the office didn't go unheard. The scandal reached the ears of onlookers and shattered the refined, tender mask David had so carefully maintained. He had always been a man obsessed with dignity. He wouldn't even step out if his clothes had a single wrinkle. But now, because of Winnie, he lost all semblance of grace. Winnie's husband was firm in his decision to divorce. My daughter told me dramatically, "Mom, it's not over yet." "There's more?" I looked up from a pile of travel photos. Winnie's husband is worth billions, but he did a full prenuptial agreement. And now he's hired a top-tier lawyer to handle the divorce. His lawyer is my mentor. She told me they'll be suing Winnie for being at fault in the marriage due to infidelity, and they're aiming to deny her any share of the assets. Apparently, her children were raised mostly by the nanny. She never paid much attention to them. After finding out what happened, both kids distanced themselves from her and took their father's side. But the worst part, her husband turned around and reported Winnie for academic misconduct. That part piqued my curiosity. David's love for Winnie had never just been about her appearance, it was her inner self that captivated him. In his eyes, elegance and intelligence were merely surface traits, it was her vast knowledge and integrity that moved him. He admired her scholarly aura, her unbending spine, her poetic mind, and her lofty ambitions beneath her calm demeanor. Someone like that, guilty of academic fraud? Winnie climbed from lecturer to full professor very quickly after getting married. Turns out, some of her papers were ghostwritten by people her husband hired. Others were stolen from the PhD students she supervised. One of her doctoral students reported her years ago, but her husband intervened and had it buried. Now that he's stepping away, dozens of senior academics have jointly filed complaints. One male student was stuck for 8 years without graduating because of her. He's almost clinically depressed. I sighed after hearing all this. I wondered what David must have felt when he learned the truth. Not long after, Winnie was dismissed by the university. The scandal between her and David spread like wildfire. In order to contain it, the university demoted David as well. But what I didn't expect was that the person who would suffer the most from all this turned out to be Sean. Chapter 10. Most of Winnie's connections and resources had come from her husband. After the explosive fallout between them, the clients Sean had acquired through her began to vanish one by one. Starting a business was already tough, and Sean had always relied on shortcuts. Now that those shortcuts were gone, he struggled to move forward. His company hit a wall. Under the dual blow of failed romance and crumbling career, Sean spiraled into depression and stagnation. During that time, my daughter was busy preparing for her year-end work presentation. So I traveled alone to Changbai Mountain. I soaked in an open-air hot spring, surrounded by snow in -30 degrees Celsius. As steam billowed and mist rose around me, I caught a snowflake in my hand. Even my hair was frosted with rime ice. In winter, Heaven Lake is not always open to the public, and many tourists leave disappointed. But I had plenty of time. I stayed at the resort until the lake finally opened. It was a sun-drenched day, the sky a brilliant, vivid blue. I climbed all 1,442 steps, panting, until I caught my first full view of Heaven Lake from the western slope. The wind tousled my hair. My body was tired, but my heart felt light. It was here that I discovered a lifelong passion, skiing. I chose alpine skiing and quickly progressed from beginner to intermediate slopes. Riding the gondola halfway up the mountain, I sped downhill at sunset, racing alongside the last rays of light. I loved the wind whipping past my ears, the weightless moment I sank into the powdery snow. It was wild. Boundless. Free. I could chase the wind. I could chase freedom. The mountain at my side, the wind on my face. This was a kind of liberation I'd never experienced in over 50 years of life. My travel blog became a skiing log. To my surprise, my follower count didn't drop, it soared. One evening, just after I returned to the hotel, my daughter called me. She said, "Mom, Winnie got divorced. Basically left with nothing. But she got married again. After divorcing her husband, Winnie married David. Maybe their youthful love had been so deeply imprinted, it made them forget all the bitterness in between, made them hold on to the rose-tinted beginning. David still chose Winnie in the end. Those former lovers had finally become husband and wife, legally. While I was zipping through the slopes, they were the ones left juggling groceries and utility bills. Winnie had lived as a rich man's wife for too long. She could handle experiencing life in small doses, but not as a long-term lifestyle. David didn't know how to take care of others. In the beginning, he tried to change for Winnie, learning to cook, to do laundry. But he couldn't wear that mask forever. Eventually, he started complaining that Winnie wasn't domestic enough. Winnie in turn blamed him for being unable to earn money. Work frustrations only made things worse for two middle-aged people already worn down by life. In that kind of emotional low, the smallest spark could ignite a fire. So, after 30 years of not arguing, they began fighting all the time. What once felt like a lifelong passion had withered into something trivial and exhausting. "Mom, he called me. He said he wants to see you. David couldn't reach me because I'd changed my phone number. Neither he nor Sean had my new contact info. No need. Old people and old stories, they no longer have anything to do with me. But David eventually found me through my social media account." Chapter 11. There was an account called Mist and Rain, Let Life Be that liked every video I posted. Then a message came from him. "Tiffany, I've never seen you so radiant. Lately, I've done a lot of thinking and realized how wrong I was. You were the wife who stood by me through 30 years of wind and rain, who cared for my every need, who gave birth to our children, and who wore mourning clothes to bury my parents. That notebook should never have existed in the first place. If I could go back to 2008, I wouldn't have gone on that business trip, wouldn't have met with Winnie. I would have stayed by your side and our daughters, so at least, when you were in pain, you'd have a shoulder to lean on. I should have severed ties with Winnie back in 1994. The rest of my life should have been with you. Tiffany, I regret everything. Let's start over. For the sake of the 30 years we weathered together, for the sake of our children, please, just give me a chance to see you." I finished reading and chuckled softly. David, yes, he regretted it. But what was it that he regretted? It wasn't that he suddenly discovered some hidden truth about his feelings for me. Because the truth is, he never truly loved me at all. Now that his ex-wife had left, I became the one he couldn't have. So in his mind, he romanticized me, molded me into the image of a long-lost, perfect love. And yet, this so-called white moonlight had been the woman who cooked, cleaned, and served him with heart and soul for 30 years. Especially after experiencing life with Winnie, the contrast was too much for him to accept. So he came back, hoping I'd return to take care of him again. But why should I? My life was never a footnote in his story. I didn't respond. I simply blocked him without hesitation. The next time I saw the name David, it was in the news. Chapter 12. That day, I was on General Mountain in Altai. I happened to see David and Winnie's names on the news and clicked in. The report was short, just a few lines, but it summarized their entire remaining story. After yet another argument, David and Winnie got physical. Winnie pushed David. He fell from the balcony. He landed headfirst. Blood pooled around him. Then his eyes closed, he fell into a coma. Fortunately, he was rushed to the hospital in time. His life was saved. But he was paralyzed. He would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. As for Winnie, she was arrested on suspicion of intentional assault. This woman, whom I had never met, yet who had cast a shadow over 30 years of my life, was finally headed to prison. After reading the news, I did what I always did, I suited up and went skiing. At 7:30, the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the snowy slopes in warm light. I chased the sunset, gliding through the last streaks of orange. Evening clouds flared on my left, snowy peaks rose on my right, and down the golden trail, city lights began to flicker on. In this moment, freedom and the vast wilderness were the only paths I needed. The end.